Good evening, and welcome to Half-Assed a Piece Theatre. I'm Alistair T. Tonight's story takes us back to the 20th century, late December 1999. We find our champion in need of a race car. Our story begins with a friend discovering the perfect ride in a local newspaper classified. Enjoy. What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to the channel. I am your host, T. Thanks for indulging me a little bit, trying some new stuff out with intros and things. I hope they're appreciated. I'm having fun doing it, so at least I'm getting a laugh out of it. Hopefully you are too. I have a minor background in radio broadcasting and some film making, and so I was just kind of getting back to those roots a little bit. It might suck, but maybe that's why I didn't stick in the industry, because maybe I wasn't that good. I don't know, guys. Doesn't really matter. What I do consider myself good at is loving Mopars. Not in that way, mind you. Enjoying Mopars. No, that sounded bad too. What I do consider myself good at is being a huge Mopar fan. To get into why we're staring at this car, kind of have to go back a little bit and tell a little bit of a story. The purpose of today's video has everything to do with that list of, man, I wish I had that back. I have one of those. I have several of those. Who am I kidding? This car was supposed to replace one of those. Back in 2005, I sold one of my favorite cars ever, and it was a 1971 Plymouth Duster. And it was a drag car, like this is going to be. I had actually purchased this back half kit and was going to install it in that car. But the guy that originally turned that into a race car, he came calling, and we hemmed and hawed about it for a little bit, and eventually I agreed to sell it back. I'm sorry, my friend. I do regret that to some extent, because I loved that car, and I really thought this 72 could replace that car. And, well, maybe if I ever finished it, it probably would. Here we are. I guess that's 17 years later. You believe that? I sold that car 17 years ago. What we're going to do today, we're going to step back in time. We're going to revisit my life with the 1971 Plymouth Duster drag car. So here I sit, still in front of the 72 Duster, in my Utah Jazz beanie. Get a good look at that jazz note there. I'm sitting because to tell this story, I have a lot of notes. Here are the notes. I guess these are notes too, but these are more specifically my log books. So I'm going to reference those from time to time. It was December of 1999. My buddy DW called me up. He'd been looking in the newspaper classifieds. You remember those? It didn't take long to find out what he was trying to point out to me. A 1971 Plymouth Duster. It was already a race car of sorts. It had a cage in it. I should say a roll bar. It had a 440, a torque flight 727, 8¾ had been narrowed. The car was mini tubbed. The springs moved in, and a 456 geared sure grip. Somebody went with me. We looked at the car. All I know is that I absolutely fell in love with the car. I did some begging, some borrowing, probably some pleading. I don't think I stole anything. Somehow I got the car. I was able to buy it. Somebody helped me bring it home. I don't know, guys that know this story, help me out with some of these details. I bought the car, I brought it home, and this is December of 99, so in Utah, we're in the middle of the off season. Our local track that we no longer have, unfortunately, they closed that down in 2018, and it's now warehouses. Yay, fantastic, love that. But I wanted a race. That was my goal. I'd been down the strip in my Charger, so here we are. Found a drag car, brought it home, and it looked like it was ready to go. There were a few things about it I wanted to change. It had this gargantuan, probably 74 through 76 A-body bumper on it. So this bumper was just, one, it was ugly. Two, it weighed 4,000 pounds, and so it had to go. It had a really short front tire on it. I remember that, and I, for some reason, ran that for several years. Probably 22-inch tall tire. Quite a bit of rake in the back. It had super stock springs on it. Chevy slapper bars, which, sorry guys, I hate those. I think they sucked. But I didn't want to mess with it too much. So I was going to give this thing a whirl and see what happened. So the first event that we ever ran with this car was a place in St. George, Utah called High Country Raceway. I'm just a young guy in my early 20s, and I don't know how to tune myself out of a paper bag. And so we had some issues, right? It ran okay, but I don't remember doing anything with jetting or timing or anything like that. All part of the learning process. 1361, 1363, 1360 at 101. I guess it was better than I remember. Salt Lake City, Rocky Mountain Raceways opens up. From what I can tell, I think we figured some things out. We've got some 1320 passes. And I was under the impression that I never won a first round that first season. And the first couple events, how did I get to the third round? I don't know. And I think we were into the month of May. Temperatures start to heat up a little bit in Salt Lake. And we realized that I could not hot lap this car. And in some cases, it would be boiling from the time I started the car to make the run till the time I got back to the pits. I mean, we're talking 2:30. We decided the radiator was junk. It was either plugged or just not enough capacity. So that was the first thing I think that I changed on the car, was radiator. But towards June, we start to really figure this car out. I have notes here where I removed all the choke stuff from the carburetor, pulled all that out. We now have the aluminum radiator in there, and remove heavy 900 billion pound front bumper. I'm glad I kept this logbook. However, I would slack off on that as the years went by. Boom, we are running in the 12s. Click off at 1267. Where in the crap did that come from? Obviously somebody helped me try and tune it up a little bit. We had a decent first year. I did actually win some rounds, and so that, helped me feel better about myself. High Country Raceway had a Thanksgiving race. The car saw some slightly faster times. So I think best ET of the year, 12:55. The year 2000, we raced a season, pretty much a full season, and had a great time doing it. That said, we knew some things needed to change on the car. It wasn't, mostly it was me, because I was just a new driver. I was still learning the ropes. I used to work at Super Shops. Some of you guys may remember that name. And during my time there, I bought some good stuff. Indy cylinder heads. I bought an Urson cam, a 950 Holley, Mallory ignition. I threw it all together and slapped in my Charger. I screwed some things up really bad, but not stuff that couldn't be fixed. After that experiment, all that stuff was put on the shelf and sat for a few years, pretty much until this car came along. So during the off season, this off season I think is where I added Caltrax to the car. Either that or somewhere mid season, because I know sometime in 01 there were Caltrax on the car. Me and my buddy DW, we went on a secret mission, basically put all this stuff together because I wanted to just come out of the gate and shock everybody. I had this car that ran 1260s in Salt Lake, and we were hoping to come out and just, a second and change, second and a half. So we slapped all that stuff on, the indies, the roller cam, the carb, all that jive. We had it on the car, and it was ready to rock and roll. While it was faster, it wasn't much faster. 1220s, 12 teens. So we picked up 410s. With everything that I had done, I was really disappointed. But the car was consistent. It ran a ton of 1220s. 1220s, 1221, 22, right in that range, right? And so I didn't really mess with it. Just came out and raced because I was winning some rounds. I was really starting to figure it out. In fact, August of that year, there was an event at Rocky Mountain Raceway. It's called the Nitro Nationals. And this was an awesome event. They brought in different big name fuel car guys, funny car guys. Man, it was amazing. I love Nitro, and it was fun. But that race was my very first taste of victory. We actually won. And so the car is going rounds. I'm driving. And I was learning to cut lights. I mean, that event, I had okay, and some of you guys, I don't know how many tracks still do this, but back in 2001, our track still measured, from the time of the last yellow, right? So the last yellow on, time starts. So a perfect light is 0.500. I had a 504, 532, 511. We were running, man, and the car was good. 1229, 29, 32. The night settled in, the sun went away, the track cooled off, things were starting to speed up. 1223, 1223. I won the freaking race. I had tasted victory. It was sweet. Looking at the logbook, my note on that run, an all-green Mopar final. Thor's 68 Barracuda goes 11:79.7 on an 80. I steal the Kermit the Frog race. And I have that in quotes, right? But we had fun. I was so happy that night. Couldn't believe it. But I still was not satisfied at the speed of the car. It just always was in the background of my mind, even as consistent as the car was. So we start messing around just for fun. And we were at a race. And I don't know why I hadn't thought of it, but somebody said, "Have you checked your throttle linkage?" I said, "Well, I guess." Not good enough, obviously. We check it, and I don't know how much more throw we had. Another 25% of total throw was missing. Basically I was bottoming out on the pedal, and there was still a gang of throw left in it. So, eureka moment. We fix that, we readjust everything, 1188, 1182, and tweaking and whatever, 1178 by the end of that race. By the end of that year, at Rocky Mountain Raceways, we saw 1160s. But that year I got to race as part of the team Rocky Mountain Raceways at the Summit ET Series Division 7 Finals in Las Vegas. Looking at the logbook, I had some success, won a few rounds, I think third round in one event here, but I found some issues. Basically the car, you'd get up on the big end and it'd start to, dance around a little bit. And I started checking things and basically determined that the upper control arm bushings were a little bit sloppy, and so that prompted a front end rebuild. After that point, replaced a bunch of stuff. The car, new fast time, went 11:29 at 118 in Vegas. Put a cap on 2001. Moving into 2002, we start to really get a hang of things. We're consistent, we're cutting lights. We ran a best 11:48 at Rocky Mountain at 119 that year. Had my first perfect light, and it looks like we made it through that season with no victory, unfortunately. Had a lot of late round events, but we just couldn't get over that hump. The end of that season, we did do some away races as well. We raced the Division ET Finals in Fallon, Nevada. Looking back, the car was a little bit faster there. I think we got some 1130s out of it. Looked like we were mostly trying to figure ourselves out. I'll say that. We did run some good races, have a few round wins. Didn't go too deep in any of those events. I think I had to race one of my buddies, my buddy Charles. He did me a favor and red lit on me. Thank you, appreciate that. It's actually kind of crazy to think back. I know most of you, if you're drag racers, you've heard the name. A guy by the name of Kyle Seipel put me on the trailer. He went 508 on me, or in modern terms, 008. Had enough room for my 88 to send me packing. I look back at some of these memories. I didn't know Kyle personally, but he was a great guy, great racer. Unfortunately, no longer with us. So that's kind of a highlight, that I got to race that guy. And I got a lesson at the hands of that guy. He showed me how to drive, right? I want to say that was my first time going to the Halloween Classic too, in Boise, Idaho that year. 03, 04, my logbooks get more scarce. Record keeping apparently wasn't as important to me. '03, we managed to win a race again, put some more hardware on the shelf, another sticker on the window. I was really feeling like I figured it out. Except for some dumb reason, in '03, I still had the short tire on it. I didn't red light a lot, but I was red lighting, and it's starting to bother me. I decided, let's try a taller tire. And I think the reason I didn't is because every dollar I had got spent into getting to the track. Somebody sold me a good set of center lines that were in small bolt pattern, because I was still running a small bolt pattern wheel on the front of that car because it was still a drum brake car. We had been 118 on those drum brakes. So we bought some 26-inch, tall tires somehow. Maybe somebody gave them to me, I don't remember, but I got these wheels, put them on, and I think that was kind of fixing my red light issue to some extent. Actually, one of my favorite moments of drag racing, period, and probably my favorite win. Won some more hardware, but this time it was an event called the National Dragster Challenge. To win that meant a Wally trophy. So this schlub has a Wally on his shelf, just one, albeit, but I won that trophy and I was stoked for the longest time, and I still just look at that thing and I'm taken back to that day. Probably another reason why I miss this Duster so much. End of that season came and lots of upgrades planned. I actually had a little bit of chassis work done. I upgraded the cage, had a full cage at this point, not just a bar, and then tied in the front end of the car. It was still a leaf spring car, still a torsion bar, control arm car. Tightening that car up like that was amazing. And it already had cow tracks on it, and they were actually a four-wheel drive shock, a Rancho 5000. It was like a 9-way adjustable deal. That 60 was always consistent. The cage tied together. Now, well, we were starting to see daylight under the tires. After I got it back from the chassis shop, I had always wanted to rewire the car, so I had ordered a painless kit, and my buddy had a shop and he let me use some of his space. I bet thank you, by the way. I still appreciate that to this day. He let me use some of his space in a shop that he needed space to make money. That was his livelihood, but he still helped me out because he's an awesome dude and I appreciate that. We rewired the car in his shop. It took me a few days to get it done because I worked nights back in the radio days. One of the stories that will always be there with me is once we got it put back together, we're getting ready to test things out. Well, I was waiting on a new throttle cable. I was like, well, yeah, we can start it, can't really drive it without throttle. Another guy, great guy, his name's Joe, he said, well, I'll run the throttle. I thought, how how this does not compute. next thing I know, well, he's sitting there, he's looking at it. Long story short, he's riding the engine compartment. He's got one foot on a frame rail somewhere. He's holding on to the roll bar that comes into the engine compartment. He's got himself supported. And then the other hand was throttle. So, all right, cool. You know, he pumps a couple shots into it, fire it up. We back out of the shop and we run down the road in front of the shop. It's like, okay, cool. You know, we go, sounds good. We turn around and come back. He starts to feed it some oats. So this horseless carriage now is starting to wrap up a little bit to the point where I think, well, is he going to let off or do I need to shift? So I elected to shift it and he kept going. So I don't know how fast we were going, but Joe's hanging on to this car like no big deal. We're in second gear, 50. We had to have been doing 50 down this road with Joe hanging off for his dear life, trying to help a guy out. We're gonna test this car. Okay, cool. One of my favorite memories. But that was kind of the end of the off season for us. We're heading into the 05 season, and my first event is Matt's, as it's still known. Well, muscle cars at the Strip, but back then it was known as Mopars at the Strip, which I still call it that to this day, half the time. But we go down there. The car was amazing, and just getting after it. I had, I think the previous year, run a 1097 in Boise, but then the following season in Vegas, we squeaked out a 1097 at some point. The car is good. I'm going rounds, and I think it was the semifinals of the main event. Who should I get lined up with but my buddy Thor, who you may recall from previous, the Kermit the Frog race, where I got my first victory. It's like, okay, well, it's late rounds. You got to race your buddies sometime. Trying to remember how that went down. Got pictures of it. It's awesome. He was dialed 1103. I was dialed 1097. We leave. You know, in the picture I have that we're right together there. We're going down track, looking over at each other. I don't remember if he looked at me, but I was trying to give him the death glare, you know. Back off. Back off. He didn't back off. He had to have taken a stripe or something. I don't remember who took the stripe. His win light came on. My day was done. But it was a semifinal. It was a major event. He went on to runner-up, I think, that race. But amazing day for both of us. We were both stoked to be there. But then the 05 season, really good season. Won again at RMR. We ran again the Halloween Classic. At that point, I was in the habit of finishing my year off in Idaho at the Halloween Classic. We had made some changes to the car too. I'm trying to remember when we did that. It was probably after Matt's. Finally got disc brakes. Upgraded to big bolt pattern, factory brakes, the 73 to 76 A-body stuff. Got a set of matching weld wheels for the front, and just had a ball, man. Had a great time. Like I say, won once at RMR and went to Idaho. Had a good time. Never won in Idaho. Man, still kind of my, I wouldn't say Achilles heel. I mean, I have some decent luck there. Go rounds, just can't get over that hump and win an event there. I guess the important thing to note in 05, the Halloween Classic is over. I didn't know it then, but that would be the last time I ever raced that car. I don't know, man. I kind of feel a little bit here still that sting, right? Like selling that car was a mistake, because obviously here we are, unfinished, the replacement. And it was only 2018 that I was able to purchase another drag car, my 67 Dart. So a lot of time living with regret. Yeah, it's still, I still get the feels on that one. Not fully over it. If it was ever offered back up, I'd do what I had to do to try and buy it back. Hint, hint. You know who you are. Let's make this happen. But man, I miss that car. I miss it a lot. Having another race car helps. It really does. But as they say, don't live in regret. Don't dwell on the past so much, other than to appreciate the good memories, the fun times, and there were a lot. We had so much fun racing together, me and my buddies back then. All you guys, you know who you are. I do appreciate you guys hanging out with me on this trip down memory lane. I think this is something I want to do from time to time. We might do that. We might step back down memory lane and we might, have the silly intro. We might have some fun with that. Lots to look forward to. That's my focus. That's my goal, trying to build this channel up. Get some of these projects moving forward. The Charger, the Valiant, the Dart, the Duster. Maybe one day. There's another one on the outside of the garage that I do have high hopes for. We'll talk about that one in these days. There'll be hijinks too. You can rest assured. See what we can get ourselves into trouble-wise. So thanks for watching. I appreciate it. Catch you on the next one.